Hi, welcome to one more episode of Zindagi Ka Safar. So today we are joined by Dr. Kris Iyer, who is joining us from Sydney, and uh, I have a very fond memory of Krish um, because he was one of my students when I was teaching at TFI Management Institute Manipal. What you see at the background behind is actually the institute where I used to be teaching, and I'm also alumnus of that place. And Krish also was there. And this particular pathway is very similar to what we are talking about, Zindagi Ka Safar or journey of life. But this used to connect two different buildings. So I don't know, we used to be calling one a old building and new building. I don't know which one was what, but that is what was there. But the interesting part about that wall which is there, and that's where I remember Kris, because that was the wall that after we have done it, I have done it as a student, that once we have done with our classes, we will go and sit on that wall. Yeah. So the whole day you have classes and all, and if you go back to your hostel and
Yeah.
otherwise, you used to be sitting there. Yeah? So because when these people came and I used to be teaching in the first year, I used to be teaching finance courses and all. One day I think the whole class did not do any assignment. Yeah? So I scolded them saying that what. So they said, no, sir, we didn't have time or something, some reasoning like that they gave. Yeah? So then I said, okay, you have to do it by next day or something like that, some extension of the assignment which was there. And I remember I was coming from here, and there was, I think, couple of people who were sitting on this, and one of them was Krish. Yeah, and so I just, while passing, I just looked at him, and he immediately jumped down from that wall, and he said, "Sir, I was working on your assignment." So I still remember that, because you have to work on my assignment, which is a lot of working capital problems, and otherwise you can't do it without a pen and paper. There has to be big numbers. Yeah. So I definitely remembered. So I just said, "Oh, that's wonderful," and I just went off. And I just remembered that, and I said, "This guy is pretty creative in answering, and one day, bada hoke ye kitab jarur likhega." And we are going to be talking about not only his Zindagi Ka Safar, we are going to talk about his creativity, and he has written a one of the number one bestsellers which he has written. We'll talk about that. So, Krish, welcome to this show. And can you talk about
Thank you,
how
sir.
your
I
Zindagi
also
Ka Safar
remember
has been?
working
Yeah.
capital management quiz. I want to remind you of the working capital management quiz. Not only did we not do the assignment, I think I don't know how others did, but I definitely failed that quiz
Oh,
on working capital management. And because I failed that quiz, and I am now a finance lecturer, whenever I do cash conversion cycle or accounts receivable turnover, I often do think of the paper that I actually failed.
and in a way, I think compared to many other concepts, that was a very simple one. How do you find a net working capital if you know the formula? It's like a simple math. It does not have anything much to be doing it compared to, let's say, time value of
Yeah,
money or finding out a. At our time, I think we used to had to remember annuity, present value, future value, and the formula used to be
tables
a little
and
tough.
yeah,
Yeah, you need to be remembering, but this one is a
yeah,
simple one if you get it. But anyway,
simple one.
simple one. Yeah. So, but we will talk about more. So, Chris, talk about where did
Sure.
you, uh, where were you born, and where did you study, and uh, your
Sure.
journey till TAPME, and then further, I believe you have studied even further than that.
Sure. So, my father used to work in a government bank. I
Hmm.
think it might have been privatized now, but at that time it was owned by post nationalization. It was a government bank. And
Okay.
one of the policies, I believe, of government banks at that time was to keep on transferring the staff members every 2, 3 years to different states, different regions,
Hmm.
etc. So I think there was not a preference to put them where their domicile is. So
Hmm.
although I'm from a town called Madurai
Okay.
in Tamil Nadu,
Hmm.
my father was working in Orissa,
Oh, okay.
and I was born in a village called Brajraj Nagar
Hmm.
near Sambalpur in Orissa. So that's where I was born, and I think after I was born, I think in a couple of years or something, they moved to Chennai,
Okay.
which is where I did my primary schooling.
Hmm.
It's all over the place because after Chennai, I had to move to Bangalore where I did middle schooling, and then I did my high school back in Calcutta
Okay.
because the bank was headquartered in Calcutta, UCO Bank, and
Okay.
I did my high schooling in St. Thomas Boys School in
Hmm.
Kitterport, which is I think the
Oh,
second oldest school in India, at least I'm sure it's a second oldest school. So it was more than 200 years old, I think, by the time even when I was studying there.
Hmm.
Then I came back to Bangalore, did my PUC, what we call 11th standard, 12th standard,
Hmm.
in Karnataka, and then did my BCom there. And
Okay.
after BCom, I wrote the CAT examinations.
Hmm.
I wonder if I would have done better if I had taken time off, prepared for the CAT exam, and written it the second time.
Hmm.
Uh, so, I just wrote it once, and I got a call from. I didn't get in any of the IIMs at that time. I got a call from what is Symbiosis,
Okay.
something to do with Symbiosis.
Hmm. Hmm.
Then in our times, there used to be an institute called IMT Ghaziabad,
Ah,
and
IMT also.
because we didn't have these many IIMs, yeah, I
Hmm.
think we had only four IIMs, and the fifth IIM was just starting or something
Yeah,
in
Indore was
1997. IIM
Lucknow.
Indore or
Lucknow
something,
was there,
just about
but
starting. Yeah.
Indore was about to start. Yeah.
Lucknow was there. Lucknow was definitely
Hmm.
there. And so the options were quite limited.
Hmm.
And IMT, MDI were like really top institutes at that time.
Hmm.
And then I got a call in TAPME.
Hmm.
So I went to the interview in all these three places, and generally good in talking and stuff. So I managed to get through the group discussion and interview in all three places. I
Hmm.
had an admission from IMT and Symbiosis and TAPME, and um, my brother did advise me to wait and try for IIM the next year, but
Okay.
I was kind of in a hurry.
Hmm.
uh, so I kind of thought, between these three, I thought TAPME was closer home. Manipal is
Hmm.
closer to Bangalore,
Hmm.
and I think I had this. My father had heard some very good things about TAPI Management Institute. He said it looks like a good institute to go to,
Hmm.
and that's how I actually joined TAPME, where I spent the years 1997 to 99. But I'm actually, although the TAPME educational qualification has doesn't really have significance in my professional life,
Hmm.
because I've never used this degree for any purpose. But I
Hmm.
would like to think that the maximum learning experiences of my life, both professionally and personally, I mean, in terms of not in terms of finance or economics, but in terms of pressure, timeline, deadlines, and also
Hmm.
personal friendships that have lasted for years and years, for decades. And that's those things I'm very happy that I actually went to TAPME. It's a lifelong of memories which nothing else can buy. So that's really how I got into TAPME to do my PGDM.
So after that, I think you studied more. You went to Australia and then you studied more.
Yeah, I did actually. So
Okay.
after TAPME, I got a campus placement in Small Industries Development Bank of India, SIDBI,
Hmm.
and I went to SIDBI. I was posted, got a job as a management trainee,
Hmm.
and it was about I was there for about a year, and it was not the most interesting of assignments.
Hmm.
I don't know how the other students who got into SIDBI through campus placement fared. I think there
Hmm.
was just one other student, another girl from TAPME, and then I think there were some people from MDI and Jamnalal Bajaj and so on. A few
Okay.
people indicated that they were happy, but most people felt that it was a very clerical accounting kind of job where you're just filling up registers and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And it was kind of, when you finished an MBA, you kind of had this great dreams that I'll be doing this and that. And I was hearing from my batchmates that they were doing a lot. And I
Yeah.
was very young and impressionable and suggestible at that time, and I felt like मैं कुछ नहीं कर रहा हूँ यार, टाइम वेस्ट हो रहा है, बस क्लर्क की तरह लिख रहा हूँ, मैनेजर का नाम है लेकिन जॉब तो क्लर्क का कर रहा हूँ. So
Uh,
and then slide, and I was they put me in Calcutta office, and I most of my friends in Calcutta had moved on. I didn't have any friends there. Personal
hmm.
life, it was really getting really boring. And
Hmm.
then I thought, chalo kuch karte hain, look for a job. I think that was 2000 was not a great time to look for a job anywhere. It wasn't
Hmm.
really happening, and I applied for Canada, Australia, etc. to see if I can go for higher studies.
Hmm.
By the time I actually managed to get a job in Bangalore in another place, I also had this admission in hand.
Okay.
And an admission in a foreign university was a very seductive thing. I thought, chalo mauka mil raha hai, chal ke dekhte hain. And that's
Hmm.
how I actually moved to Australia to study.
Um,
And
and
sir,
you,
should I
yeah,
explain more?
you
Or?
not only did your, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
masters, you further went to do your PhD, and
yeah.
that's how now it's Dr. Kris Iyer.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So the story behind the PhD, and I'm not making this up, sir, because you are here and
Okay.
we have a tap me relationship. It's not like that. I can substantiate this. When when we were in tap me, uh, uh, we had a number of young lecturers at that time.
Hmm.
You were one, and then I think after you, um, Professor Pitabas Mohanty
Pitavas
joined
also had
us,
joined that time. Yeah.
and
Hmm.
then I think SKP sir joined us,
Correct.
or maybe
Correct.
he was already there, and
Hmm.
the finance department had become very strong
Yeah.
suddenly in that, and I think we were lucky in that sense. So there was a solid foundation in finance that we were getting.
Hmm.
And to add to this, I think we also had another professor, the late Muthuperu,
Yes.
uh,
Economics,
who came in from
macroeconomics.
IIM Ahmedabad to teach economics.
Hmm.
And sir, I'm sure his soul will not object, because he was very fond of me personally, and
Hmm.
I was very close to him.
Hmm.
And he was, and I think everybody will know that I'm telling it in a loving way. He was a very eccentric man,
Hmm.
and massively passionate about economics. And
Hmm.
he did a lot of experiments in the class, and suddenly and because we did not have any solid economics, excepting the basic economics, we didn't do much in our course, and we were doing mostly finance there.
Hmm. Hmm.
And this economics was really enticing, and I started getting a lot of interest in economics,
Hmm.
and finance and economics, and I started thinking, why don't I do something in finance and economics?
Hmm.
And I got the University of Queensland was introducing a new degree program called Masters in International Economics and Finance. It was
Hmm.
a first batch. It's still there. In fact, I taught the batch till last year, and they
Okay.
always say, "So he was in the first batch of this particular course." So I did that course in
Uh-huh.
Australia,
Wow.
and I was doing quite well, because let's face it, sir. I mean, TAPME is not an easy place to study. I mean, I
Hmm.
don't. I'm sure it is the case now, but in our times, how much you used to fail us. So I don't have to tell you how
I-
difficult it
Even
was, and
I think even
and
now it will be, because relative grading may, if there are 100 people, bottom 5 or 10 will
yeah,
always fail, irrespective of whether you get 80% marks or whatever. So that is the tough
will
one.
fail.
It will fail.
So it was really tough. And when I went to do a second master's, I didn't really have to study anything in finance, because
Ah.
we had already adequately trained.
Hmm.
So because of which I had an advantage over many students in finance, and I could focus a lot of time in economics. As a
Hmm.
result of which, I started getting the highest grades in all subjects.
Hmm.
And I had an opportunity to leave a number of finance subjects because I'd done in TAPME, and I
Hmm.
managed to replace them with electives in a
Hmm.
subject that I never studied in TAPME.
Wonderful.
It's called econometrics,
Okay.
because
Oh.
we were not training econometricians in TAPME. So I
Yes.
managed
Yes.
to get econometrics electives, and I
Hmm.
did 2 3. I think I had the maximum number of econometrics electives in that group of students,
Hmm.
and my grades were very high, and because I had this very strong econometrics background,
Hmm.
I already had a scholarship in the last semester of my master's degree because of my
Hmm.
performance. And
Hmm.
Australian government had this thing called the Commonwealth Government Scholarship, which was given to
Okay.
at that time for about 30 students or something. I think economics had 3 students. It's by the government itself,
Hmm.
and then uh, there were a number of comparative applicants from all over the world, but perhaps because I was from the university and I was scoring the highest mark in the university, they actually gave it to me,
Hmm.
subject to the condition that I'll do some coursework in economics, which I obviously agreed for.
Hmm.
And because I was, I needed some money to live off, they also made me a tutor in the school, teaching
Wow.
micro first year. So I was teaching as a tutor. That
Okay.
was, it was hardly anything, but I was a bachelor and I was young, and I didn't have too many bad habits apart from the usual ones that I picked up in school and tap me and stuff. Those are affordable habits at that time.
Hmm.
So that money was adequate for me, and they were covering my fees. So
Hmm.
I managed to spend about 4 or 5 years to do my PhD, and eventually, my PhD actually reads PhD. It's not a PhD in economics and econometrics. So
Okay.
eventually, I got a PhD in a subject that I had not heard of when I actually finished my degree in TAPME. So I did that, and that's how I completed my educational process cycle.
Okay. So post that, normally once you do a PhD, I think the most common thing is to be in the either consulting field or into academics. So teaching is one. So what are you doing now? Let's say last 4 5 years.
I am actually again teaching, but
Oh,
it's not been a linear process like many people, where you finish your PhD, you get into a university, and then you start teaching. In fact,
mm-hmm.
when I was doing my PhD, the only other people I knew, because it's not like I was very socially known in Australia or anything. I had hardly any friends there or
Mm,
relatives there. So the
mm,
people I knew were all people from the university, and the normal thing I thought of life was you do a PhD, you become a lecturer in some university. So
mm,
I actually did just start my career after my PhD as a lecturer in Massey University in New Zealand.
mm,
So I became a lecturer for economics in New Zealand. I was there for about 3 years. Then I managed to, because I had an accounting background and an econometrics background, I managed
mm,
to get a job to utilize, accounting data in tax offices to retrieve intelligence for government, etc. So
mm,
I started working for the New Zealand government's Ministry of Economic Development. First, I was senior economic advisor. Then I was chief advisor of research. Then
mm,
I joined a consulting company. So for a substantial part of my early life, I was not in academics. Then I
mm,
joined a consulting company, a senior consultant and head of research practice over there.
mm,
Then, at a certain stage, due to family circumstances, I needed a slower life. I came
mm.
to Australia back
Okay.
in 2014. After about
Mm,
10 years, I came back. And between 2014 and 2020, I was doing sessional teaching, which is
mm,
like I was not committed to any university, but I used to teach in University of Queensland. I taught econometrics, my alma mater. I went there to teach econometrics there. And
mm,
then University of New South Wales Australian Graduate School of Management, which is among the top business school. Because of my consulting background, they asked me to teach economics there.
mm.
It's a top business school here. I was teaching economics for MBA
Okay.
as an adjunct staff over there. Then I
Mm-hmm.
taught in several other university specialized programs. I taught in UNSW. I taught financial crisis because that
Mm,
was very closely related to my thesis area,
mm,
and I was doing other works from here and there. And eventually this year, kind of the sessional jobs, etc., they started drying out, and I thought of taking up a permanent position to increase my research output for the next few years. And there's a private university in Australia that's really fast growing,
mm,
which I was associated in another capacity as a student recruiter. I
mm.
took up a job with them as a senior lecturer. So now I'm in Torrance University, Australia, as a senior lecturer.
Okay. That's wonderful. Now, given that now you have stayed in Australia and New Zealand for a long period of time and also worked there. So, do you think the work culture will be different than what might happen in an Indian thing? Though you have not worked in academician as a India, but
Yeah.
is there any substantial difference which you think is there in these countries?
So this the my knowledge of Indian work environment is very limited, because I probably worked about 1 year in
Hmm.
SIDBI, which is a government organization,
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
not representative of the corporate India anyway.
Hmm.
And whatever I know about Indian academic industry is either as a student,
Hmm.
which is also very very old information.
Hmm.
And because of business associations, I am associated with some universities. In terms of student recruitment, etc. So
Okay.
I do interact a little bit with professors in India.
Hmm.
And uh, I think academic wise, uh, workload, I think in terms of teaching, my impression, and
Hmm.
I'm not 100% sure I'm right, that the teaching workload in India tends to be much more
Hmm.
than in Australia or New Zealand,
Okay.
which means there's a lot more pressure, time
Hmm.
pressure to achieve research outputs. So
Hmm.
here you probably have, semester off, semester leaves, etc. And, even during the semester, you get a substantial amount of time
Hmm.
to do research. So
Hmm.
that might be one point of difference. The other point of difference I also think would be that in India, and this is very much, I think, what I hear from about the United States also, there's a huge disparity in terms of teaching in A institute or B institute, right?
Hmm.
I mean, if you're teaching in IIM Ahmedabad, the kind of professor I'm guessing you're finding there
Hmm.
will be substantially different in quality than some unknown institute somewhere in some smaller city.
True.
But in a Western, in Australia or something, whether you're teaching in you know University of Queensland, or whether you're teaching in some higher education provider, there
Hmm.
will be a difference in quality. But
Hmm.
they will all be of a certain benchmark and a certain quality. So I think
Hmm.
these are some of the differences that I imagine, or I reasonably expect could be the differences, I think.
Yeah, I think you are spot on. These broadly are the things which are there because one thing specifically in most of the management institute, even for IMs as an example, though they talk about doing a lot of research, but there also, if we look at the average number of paper per faculty member, is pretty low because uh, maybe the teaching load is so high that you are teaching and in certain places IMs and also you might still have someone who might be doing some kind of help to correct the papers and otherwise uh, but for example some like when I used to be teaching in tapme and all, if I was giving you guys let's say 5 or 6 different quizzes, I had to check it myself. So when
Yeah.
you have 100
Yeah. Yeah.
students and every you guys will say every week this guy is giving, but I need to be checking 100 papers which is there, and that takes a big amount of time.
And the unproductive work also, no, because you're marking the same thing again and again. It's very monotonous and it's very
Yeah.
boring. And
So
in
the
these
unfortunate
universities, you
part
can
is we are
hire a
not able
teaching
to,
fellow to do
yeah,
it.
we are not able to have other people who can support and who understand the subject, who can grade it.
Yeah.
Because if there is a case study, it becomes very difficult for you. So you can't give any kind of keys to the person because it will based on the approach the person has taken and otherwise. Um, so it will be very very tough, and I we still used to feel better compared to our marketing people because they will say people will come and write um, stories of
So
Mughal Azam in between saying marketing the 4 P's of marketing are ABC and then write the whole story about Dilip Kumar and Madhubala and then in the end finish it off. So you need to read the whole thing. Finance, at least I can have a look and say that okay, maybe the last one is answer is there and okay, quickly figure out the steps are correct or not. Anyway,
and also I think there are another things, sir. This one is I think I hear that IM and top university professors make a lot of both monetarily and
yeah,
in terms of reputationally, they gain a lot by executive education programs.
yeah,
I'm guessing if you're from the smaller the institute, the less reputed the institute, the more difficult it will be to sell yourself as an executive education provider.
yes, that's true.
So I think that brand reputation is there. And the next point I'm going to make is a very controversial point. And as a researcher, I'm not supposed to say controversial points without
Researching
hard
it out,
data,
hard
without
data.
hard data, right? I have anecdotally verified it,
Uh,
but I don't know whether, but that could be a lot of bias. I have a
okay.
feeling that publishing in an international journal is more valued in India,
Yes,
and
it is.
several international outlets have a bias against Indian universities.
Hmm.
And it's much more easier to get published from a foreign university than an Indian university. Now, how can you prove this unless you've done, meta-analysis of everything? It's impossible. And most of this data is not even something that will be available in public forum, because who are we to judge whether A paper was better than B paper?
Yeah.
But I've seen some fantastic working publications in India, which have not actually gone on to the top journals. And I've
Hmm.
seen some dubious work, or not that high quality work
Hmm.
in some other universities in another overseas Western English speaking country, which have actually reached some journal publication. So I
Hmm.
think there's also that kind of obstacle that is there in Indian research, that is still not, we've still not broken past that. I mean, it's not
Hmm.
very different. A few years ago, however good you were as a cricketer, they would not rate you highly. They would say abhi slow bowl kar raha hai.
Ah.
Kapil Dev was one of the greatest bowlers, but they would always say not as good as Botham or whatever.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
now you have a Virat Kohli, and there's nobody's going to question, because money speaks, right? I mean, you're
True.
the powerhouse of cricket, and I think we have not yet become the powerhouse of academics.
Hmm.
So I think, to some, especially in fields like finance or economics or something,
Hmm.
uh, in India, I mean, you can say Professor Damodaran is of Indian origin, but he's not in India, right? Bhagavati, Amartya
Yeah.
Sen, they're
Yeah.
all, they might be of Indian origin, but they didn't make their fame and reputation while being in India. I think that bias might still be there. I feel. I mean, obviously, if I ask an Indian professor, probably they'll agree with me, but maybe a Western professor won't agree with me.
Quite true. But I think it's a very interesting point which you have brought about. And though I also have never done this, but I think you have hit it to a nail to a very large extent. um, though sometimes the quality of work, because there's a mass which is there. So for example, compared to, let's say, Australia, just as an example, if there are, let's say, 10 professors who are there in the field of let's say finance as an example, there will be thousands such people who will be there in India. And if all of them are doing similar work, sometimes the quantity of work which is coming, and if you find that 100 papers coming from India out of the 2000 or the professor which is there is not good, you'll start saying, I think maybe the remaining also, why do I pay too much attention to it? Maybe there are some
Yeah.
problem which is there. So those biases also has crept in. So today what is ending up happening specifically in the Indian context is uh, they are stuck. Even the top management education, since we're more from there, they are trying to focus on doing research and saying that we are research oriented, but that research somehow you are not able to bring into the classroom. So I am doing a research on something which is very very different than how the practical world works. Yeah. So I'm studying something, maybe bid and ask rate of the stock market, trying to figure out what is the minimum tick size which is there, which really does not matter in a liquid market. From
Yeah.
a, so when a mutual fund guy is dealing with it, he will not look at the paper and say, oh, there is going to be giving me some new algorithm for making more money. Yeah. So you are doing academic research for the sake of doing it, and maybe some of these models have been done abroad, and now you're trying to use Indian data. I plug in the same model, use Indian data for a different time frame, and then try to figure out what it is. Okay, but I think we are getting into a big amount of final discussion,
Yeah.
which is there that happens when two doctors come, and we are anyway. That's why I think called doctors of philosophy because we are pretty good at
Because we
giving
philosophize
philosophical
about
ज्ञान.
everything.
हाँ, philosophy हर चीज में philosophy करने का. But okay, let's move to the very very interesting part, and the creativity and the spark which I said. So you have written a very popular book. So uh, share a little bit about what motivated you to write it, and how easy was the writing process, because I'm assuming as an academician you will be writing a lot of academic thing, but when you're trying to write a fiction, that's a little difficult. So how was it?
So I think writing wise, I even in school I used to write
Okay.
a fair bit, and
Hmm.
I do remember, although unfortunately I don't have copies of it. I in St. Thomas Boys School, in whatever that school magazine or something was there, I used to
Hmm.
have several articles that I used to write. And I think the the love of reading and writing was inculcated because my father was and is a voracious reader,
Oh, wow. Hmm.
and he reads a lot. I mean, his reading speed is, will put anybody to shame. I mean, you
Hmm.
look around and he would have finished all the novels and everything.
Okay.
And he was also, like, most fathers of that era, very strict disciplinarian kind of thing. And
Hmm.
he used to force us to read books and write the summary for him.
Hmm.
So the idea of reading and enjoying a book and writing was inculcated in me even as a child. So I was
Hmm.
always a reader and a writer. And even in school, when I came to TAPME,
Hmm.
and I used to write some short stories in TAPME with
Okay.
some of my other friends also in TAPME, where not only in my batch, also in my junior batch,
Hmm.
there were some people who were very fond of literature and writing. So
Hmm.
we used to write some stories,
Hmm.
and that that was always there. And I think we had some consulting. I can't remember the name of company. It's a pretty famous consulting company came and they recruited one or two people. I was not one of the people they recruited,
Hmm.
but uh, I remember him announcing that everybody wanted to join that company, and they said, "I'm going to give a writing test. Whoever writes best, I'll pick the top 10 and I'll interview them."
Oh.
And he said the logic was, if you're a consultant, you need to write well. That's the
Hmm.
main job.
Hmm.
So, and one thing I remember actually shocking myself, and shocking because I was not the smartest kid in the block, or there are people much more qualified than me and doing better than me in finance in TAPME at that time. But I was
Hmm.
absolutely confident that I'll be in the top 10.
Hmm.
And that's when I started reflecting that, okay, I probably know, we used to do that SWOT analysis. And
Yeah.
that's when I realized, okay, writing is definitely my strength. And I actually know that it is my strength, which is not usual. So
Hmm.
I knew that I was good in writing. So then I went to University of Queensland, where every subject used to have a substantially written assessment.
Hmm.
And then, I did a thesis in master, then I did a thesis in PhD.
Hmm.
When I did my thesis and PhD, imagine you're doing some research, and the research is done on the computer, statistical software, econometric analysis, and uh, and most of the thesis is not is basically explaining the analysis, explaining the literature review, explaining what happened.
Hmm.
And my associate supervisor was a former journalist,
Hmm.
and his English was extremely good. Although spoken English may not be, but his written English was fantastic.
Hmm.
And uh, he always believed in saying that even a PhD is like a story.
Ah.
You
Hmm.
convey a story of what really has happened in the literature so far,
Hmm.
and you situate your research inquiry in the literature. And
Hmm.
so many gems of wisdom that even now I recall him saying is, if
Hmm.
somebody can understand you, it's not their problem, it's your problem. You
Hmm.
haven't explained yourself well.
Hmm.
So and years of that PhD writing
Hmm.
can be sometimes very frustrating. So
Hmm.
and at that time I started writing some short stories, and you know uh, when I'm completely frustrated with the thesis, start writing something.
Ah.
At that time, I was inspired by a book which later got made into a movie, A Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri.
Okay. Hmm.
And it was about the about somebody who goes overseas and lives through a life, and they have children. And
Hmm.
it's the child is basically the main protagonist,
Hmm.
and the father is a professor in university. So it was something that I really liked that book, and I started reading more about that.
Hmm.
And germ of an idea for a book
Hmm.
started forming in my mind as early as 2003 2004.
Hmm.
In terms of I've I mean, like, I'm not saying it's a great thing or anything, but when you're an international student in that era, when you don't come from a financially very comfortable family,
Hmm.
there are lots of struggles you have to go through
Hmm.
in the course of doing a PhD. You do menial jobs, you do toilet cleaning jobs, you do kitchen jobs, and you do these kind of things. Uh,
Hmm.
and people in my batch in TAPME were actually doing quite well,
Hmm.
and I was cleaning bathrooms and I was cleaning dishes and everything. There's a little bit of self pity going on over there, and it's kind of I was not in academically I was doing well, but mentally I was kind of feeling like, what am I doing? And a lot of these things stayed on in my mind. And when you're overseas, there's friendships and romances and everything. These things happen, and I started forming some ideas about what I wanted to write. And
Hmm.
then I completely forgot about it, because then I got into a job and everything. And sometimes I used to think of that. Rarely I used to think of that book, or some incident would have happened, and I would say, okay, if I had written it, how would it be?
Hmm.
And this remained for years and years and years on.
Hmm.
And eventually I wrote about 90 pages or something, and I showed it to my father, mother, and my brother, and all three of
Hmm.
them actually liked it.
Hmm.
Liked it quite a fair bit. I wasn't married at that time, so I
Hmm.
showed it only to these people. And during COVID lockdown, which is I think
Hmm.
2020 or something,
Hmm.
my wife said, "Why don't you actually write down this book? Because there are so many painful memories in your life.
Hmm.
You may not." I said, "I'm not going to write my life story for everybody to read," but she said, "Why
Hmm.
don't you write a story about this?" Uh, uh, you know, and you can put some of your life instances, you can put some of your friends instances, you can just create a fictional character and
Hmm.
create a fictional story. It might also be cathartic. My wife's a psychiatrist, so
Oh.
she said it
Okay.
might be actually cathartic process for you.
Hmm.
And I thought, okay, let me give it a shot. And I
Hmm.
picked up that earlier book that I had actually written about 90 pages of. None of those 90 pages are actually there anymore, because my writing style had evolved and I didn't use it. But that story is what I kept on. And then, of course, when I thought of it, I was 2004. I was much younger. I was much
Hmm.
older and experienced now. So the way the story, the way I changed the story was a little different. The way I approached it was a little different. There's a little bit of, I won't lie, there are significant uh, components, or parts of the book are inspired by my life.
Hmm.
There are parts of the book that are actually inspired from other people's life who I lived with, or my friends, something might have happened to them.
Hmm.
There are a little bit of stories from, tap me times, which I've
Hmm.
incorporated as to they've happened in Australia. I've combined a lot of memories. And I
Hmm.
think that's what most authors do, right? I mean,
Do
you have
correct.
memories of yourself or somebody else's memories, and then you have a
Hmm.
story and you add all those things and you create that. So that's really how this book came about. I
Okay.
really never did expect it to do well or anything,
Hmm.
but I think it was very it's a very interesting life story, I think, and I think people did like it because I could put some suspense and stuff. And I think a couple of people have movie people have also read the book. One person's actually two people have actually written to me that they might be interested, but they have not gotten back to me. So maybe there's an adaptation in store. I'm not sure.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Because I think it was um, a bestseller in Amazon for a very long time, and even now features in the top 5,000 and all. Even after so many,
Yeah.
yeah, not so many, after
Yeah,
a
I was
couple of
actually very
years. Yeah,
surprised. I was
yeah.
very surprised that it was a bestseller in Amazon for a long time, because I don't know what you have to do uh,
To
to
be
do
the
this. I mean,
bestseller, correct?
to
Yeah.
be the bestseller. I mean, it's not in the Chetan Bhagat category or anything. I think that's like millions or something. But I
Hmm.
think much like how the world's wealth is distributed, I
Yeah,
think bestsellers are also distributed like this. I think the top 10, 15 authors have the maximum number of sales.
yeah,
After that, I think even if you're able to sell a couple of thousands, you probably will be a bestseller. So I don't think
yeah.
the sales are I don't even think it would have sold 10,000. I don't have the data from the publisher, but I'd be very surprised if it has sold more than 10,000 copies. I think it should be only in thousands.
Fair enough. Okay. So we will move to last segment, which is what we call as AMA, or Ask Me Anything. Yeah.
Okay.
So there are a few questions to get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah.
So let's start with little bit on a again philosophical question. So how will you define success in life? Is the first, and the follow-up question is it important to be successful as an individual?
Okay. Um,
And
I
you can
think
answer it more from your point of view, though I said philosophy, but
Yeah, yeah, sure. I think when you mentioned success and you followed it up with is it important to have success in life? It almost
mm,
has a connotation of material success. So in that sense, I think you know uh, if I was struggling for food, or
yeah,
struggling for Maslow's hierarchy of
correct,
needs,
correct.
if I'm
Basic
kind of
needs. Mm,
if I'm at one of the lower need level and I
yeah,
give gyan that money is not important, then that's pretty hollow. Because
yeah,
ask a person who doesn't have food whether money is important, and you'll have
mm,
a completely different perspective of
yeah,
things, right? So I
yeah,
definitely believe that a certain level of material success is absolutely necessary.
yeah,
But what is that certain level? And it's obviously individualistic in terms of what
mm,
that certain level means. So I think everybody has to define a certain level of material wealth that they were going to be comfortable with.
mm,
And obviously, like the law of diminishing marginal utility, the first dollar or the first rupee is much more valuable than the
mm,
last rupee that you accumulate, right? So that's
mm,
one thing. So the follow-up answer is also this, that how important is it? I think after a certain level, probably not that important at all,
mm,
because at the end of the day, you spend 8 hours of your a day or something close to that sleeping,
mm,
and all you have is that bed, right? I mean,
mm,
you're not going anywhere, you're not in the swimming pool, you're not in the jacuzzi or whatever, right? I
mm,
mean, you are there, right? And after you go a bit older,
mm,
you can't even if I remember the times when I didn't have money to buy a chocolate, for example.
mm,
When I was in Australia, I mean, when I was in India, I was quite comfortable. But when I was in Australia, I didn't have money to buy chocolates, and I would buy a chocolate, but I would walk from the supermarket to my home, that is the price of eating a chocolate. Today, I can buy a chocolate, but I can't eat it because I got cholesterol. I used to I used to
true.
struggle for cigarettes at that time when I moved
Yeah,
to Australia, because I never had money to buy cigarettes. Today, I can't smoke cigarettes because my wife not allow me to smoke cigarettes. So after a certain level, in life, what can you do with it, right? So at this point in time, perhaps good health. I think we've all understood the importance of good health
yeah,
now.
yeah,
All of us have lost somebody in the COVID.
yeah,
Good health and happiness, peace
Hmm.
leisure is something that I have actually understood after living in the Western society, because it almost seems to me that leisure is looked down upon
Hmm.
in some aspects. Some people that I know in India, he said, "Oh, you're going home early. How can you go
Hmm.
home early? The boss will not like it." I mean,
Hmm.
why should I? I mean, tomorrow if something were to happen to me, I don't care whether the boss likes it or the organization likes it. I need to have my leisure. I'm not saying you need to be with family or anything. If you don't have a
Yeah.
family, your leisure could be swimming or reading or watching a movie or watching an
Even
OTT. Why
catching
should
up
I?
on his sleep. Catching up on
Yeah,
his sleep.
catching on your
Yeah.
sleep. Anything in the leisure, whatever is suitable to you. So
Hmm.
I do generally believe that real happiness and real success has is got more to do with you know doing a number of things that you're happy with and comfortable with. And
Yeah.
I spend a lot of my time, obviously I read, I write, and I also cook,
Hmm.
and I do a lot number of things to keep myself occupied,
Hmm.
and professional life is a only a small segment of my life now. I won't say that I've always been like that,
Hmm.
and I'm not even saying that this is a conscious choice. It's not like I made millions, therefore I'm doing this. The COVID has also forced me to, reduce the amount of work or reduce the amount of business I do
Hmm.
forcibly, which has given me an option to look at something else. But I feel that I'm a much more comfortable place now rather than rushing every time. So material success up to a certain extent, but the law of diminishing marginal utility holds.
Okay. Said the economics professor of philosophy. Okay. So then the follow-up question will be: if you have the option to make one change in your life, what will it be?
Um, there was, I guess, a change in lifestyle or change in an event.
In your life, there are different life events which is there. So,
Yeah.
for example, as you said, maybe if I had waited for one more year and tried cat one
Ah,
more time, or something like that. Yeah.
yeah. Those, obviously, I did mention that, immediately after my BCom degree, I went into TAPME to do my MBA. Had I waited for another year, prepared properly, would I have gotten into IIM? I don't know whether I would have or I would not have. Or maybe if I had not done IIM and I just become a chartered accountant, what would have happened? Obviously, life takes you in different courses, and every
Hmm.
course will have its own difficulties and struggles. The counterfactual is never known in life anyway.
Hmm.
And by and large, at this point, it's been nearly 22 years since I graduated from TAPME, and
Hmm.
given my life experiences, I've basically come to the conclusion that it does not matter, because I thought TAPME was very important, but I never used my TAPME degree anywhere. There's absolutely no significance professionally of that degree, although my time I've learned a lot there, and I've got fantastic memories, and life quality experience is fantastic. But as a degree, it's not something that I use on a day-to-day basis or use it ever.
Hmm.
So so whether those things actually make a difference, I've come to a point that it actually does not make a difference at all, whether you went to the top institute or not the top institute. In the long run, perhaps, I'm not sure that if I had done anything any differently, it would have it would have made a difference. I mean, if I not studied and I'd become a laborer, then that's a massive difference. So
Yeah.
perhaps it's going to be a life change in terms of TAPME or this or BCom or BSc or BCom or engineering or Australia or Canada, or those kind of things. I don't think those are the things that actually make a difference in life. But I think kind of the personal choices you make obviously are can make a huge difference.
Hmm.
Without going into the details, I obviously made some good personal decisions, uh, some bad personal decisions, and
Hmm.
some of the bad personal decisions have pulled my life down personally and professionally. It has had an impact on me,
Hmm.
especially one decision has made a big impact on me. Maybe if I could revisit my life, I would change the decision. I'm sure my
Hmm.
life quality would be much better. But sometimes you also think it's fated to happen.
Yeah.
Uh, sometimes situations occur in a certain way that
Hmm.
they push you to a certain directions in order to for those to happen. So perhaps it's unavoidable. If I hadn't taken this path, I'd taken another path, life would have had, or fate would have had, some other way to get me into the same amount of pressures or happiness or whatever that might be.
Hmm.
So I'm not wise enough to go to that level. But if at my level, whatever I understand of life, perhaps that personal decisions could have been a bit better. One or a couple of them could have been better. But I'm in a good place now, so I'm grateful that I've been able to come to this point at least.
Okay, wonderful. So now let's move to you mentioned about leisure. So when you are looking at a idea of a vacation, will you, given a choice, want to go on a solo thing, or will it be with your family or maybe with your friends? So will you prefer to be a solo traveler in case of vacation to get my so-called me time or whatever, or will it be with group of friends or
Sir,
family?
क्या बात कर रहे हैं सर थोड़े it's not like do I have a choice.
You don't have, so I'm
I
giving
have
you
no
again
I
that I
don't
know
have
you
any
can't leave your
choice in
family
the
and go
matter.
off. Yeah.
It's no, I have absolutely no choice in the matter. So wherever I go, I have to go with my wife. So, but to be politically correct, I want to say, uh, uh, I don't want to go solo. Wherever I go, I want to go with my wife, just in case she sees the interview.
Yes, I know. Better to be playing it safe. I agree with you. Okay. The next one, since now you are a teacher, let's ask that one bizarre thing which you might have done as a student, which your teachers are not aware of.
Um,
Smoking is something which I got to know now only. Yeah? I was not aware that you were a smoker.
so we were smoking all the time everywhere.
But
So,
maybe you guys would be hiding it, no? Saying कि professor आ गया छुपा लो पीछे कर लो and whatever. So.
I think obviously those days that there was this thing of respect was there. Today, of
So
course, the
आजकल
student
नहीं
throws
होता
cigarette
है.
on your
Yeah,
face.
people don't care
Yeah,
and all. So
yeah. In our time, we still
usually.
used to hide the smoking, and um, I think I think uh, I've never come drunk to the class. I'll be very honest. Never went gone drunk to the class. But there have been a couple of occasions when I was too drunk to come to class,
Okay.
and so those things have definitely happened. And there used to be some challenges in the class in terms of can you bunk this teacher's class, or can you walk out of this class teacher's class, so you kind of cough and pretend that you have a cough and leave the class or something. And I think I had a bet with my girlfriend at that time,
Huh.
because I think Professor Nagabrahmam had a very reputation of being the hardest
I know.
director or principal in Manipal, right? And
Yeah,
he
yeah.
used to, and it was truly famous that he was very strict. So my girlfriend at that time, her father was a professor in another university in Manipal, and she challenged me to walk out of his class.
Hmm.
And I remember pretending to have a cough fit, walking out of the class, having coffee with her, and going back to the class, which is a massive risk. Knowing him, he
Knowing
would
him.
have suspended
Yeah.
me from the university, but I
If
got
you
away
got to
with it.
know, it will be a moment's decision. You will not
I
think
wonder
twice.
if he's going to take off my degree now.
If he's a subscriber of my channel, there is a strong possibility you might get a mail saying it is revoked. No, he's a cool guy that way. So I think once we become professors, you sometimes realize that once in a while, though I thought I really hate scolding students and all. I used to find it very
Yeah,
difficult. Now, though, I find it even more difficult because most of the kids and all now are close to my elder daughter's
yeah,
age
yeah.
and all. So I find it very difficult and all. I said, will I scold my daughter? No, na, छोड़ो यार मतलब कर दिया तो ठीक है मतलब. So so I find
Yeah,
it
I
very
mean,
difficult.
it's I think it's independent. One of the biggest differences I saw was how we had a very proctoring kind of an approach
Hmm.
in TAPME.
Yeah.
And I think there was much more handheld. This is what you have to do, this is what you don't have to do. It was very I don't know if Indian universities MBA called TAPME is still like that, but we had a much more schoolish
Hmm.
way of doing things.
Hmm.
And when you go to a university, it's not a residential place. You can do
Correct.
whatever you want outside of
Hmm.
the class, right? I mean,
Hmm.
there are no questions asked. You'll be
Hmm.
punished for what you do right in terms of academic grades,
Hmm.
or bad. If you do your assignment well, you get a good grade. If you don't do well, you don't get a good grade. Simple.
Hmm.
But there it's about so many, you can't do this, you can't come to the hostel at that time, you can't go to the hostel at that time. There's a very more uh, proctoring approach, and I
Yeah.
think proctoring approach probably breeds more indiscipline.
Hmm.
and you want to break the rules, and
Hmm.
you know that thing was there. And obviously I was uh, uh, everybody in Tapmi that I knew was a little bit naughty. I mean, they
Hmm.
were all smart kids,
Has to
but
be. Has to be.
they
Yeah.
were a little naughty, and everybody had their own shares of things that they used to do. So,
Hmm.
and we used to stay in a room which is a 3-bed room. I don't know if you were in Tapmi hostels, at the
I
old
was.
Tapmi
I was.
hostel.
So there
Yeah,
were
so
one room in the corner which was there.
yeah.
Three bed ones.
105, 205, 305. So
Correct.
mine was in the second year, because you could choose. We chose 305 or 205. I don't remember. That
Okay.
was basically because it's a much bigger room. That was the den of all
So
illegal
everyone will come
activities
there
or
and
sins. Yeah, sinful activities like cigarette, alcohol, everything. So that used to be there. So that part of my life was good. So that I think any of my errors or sins in Tapmi had to do more with abuse of alcohol and things like that.
okay. So wonderful. So we will leave on the drunken note because otherwise Zindagi Ka Safar might get derailed. Now, given that we have drunk
So
with
I think Mr. laughed it.
memories, drunk with memories
Yeah.
of life. But it was such a wonderful to catch up with you. I think it's more than 2 decades when you have passed out
Yes,
and
sir.
we have not met up. Uh, the advantage is, I
I
think,
came, but I think you had gone on to a corporate life by then. By the time I
by
came
that
back to
time I would have
Tapmi,
done that.
uh,
Yes.
yeah.
I left in 2000 March or something. So 1 year after you guys passed
Oh,
out,
not much, not much. Yeah, yeah.
I just taught one more batch, uh, the batch of 2000 or 99 batch who came. I taught them the first year, and in their summers I actually went. So, um, so I would
Right.
have missed on that. And uh, I was there in Australia 2 years back. But at that point, I was just on a quick visit through Sydney and otherwise. So, though I knew you were there, I had a quick
Ah,
look at
yes, yes,
the
yes,
stuff.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. I remember the Facebook photographs. You went to many other countries also, if I remember right.
Yes, but that was a trip which I was there for around 15 days odd. So I was started
I
with
see.
Melbourne, then I was in Australia, in Sydney for a few days, and then I went to Brisbane and finished it off. Um, so I was more on the touristy route. So I very rarely met anyone, but still ended up meeting a couple of my batchmates, and otherwise they would have taken strong objection. But because there are so many people in Australia whom I know, so I
Yeah,
had to keep it a little quiet, and later came back and uploaded photos on Facebook and also. So we have missed one more
sure,
chance there, but hopefully once the lockdown
sure.
opens up and all, maybe either
We'll
you
meet.
come to India, we can catch up, or if I get a chance to come to
You're in
Australia,
Bangalore, no?
I'm based in Bangalore.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay,
Okay, sir.
so
It's an honor that you thought of me, sir. Thank you so much for thinking about me and calling me over.
okay, thanks a lot. All the best to you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
so we'll be in touch. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye bye, sir.